Hey everyone, it's Sean O'Connell, the managing director here at CinemaBlend, and there has been a bit of a controversy brewing at the Disney parks over the Splash Mountain ride and the potential to redesign it from what is currently a Song of the South themed ride into something more Princess and the Frog. We wanted to sort of dive into the quote-unquote controversy and the reactions to it, and in order to do that, I had to bring by our Disney expert with a specific focus on Disney parks, Associate Editor Dirk Libbey. Hey Dirk, how are you doing?
Doing well, sir. How are you?
I'm good. So for people who are tuning into this video for the very first time and maybe they got intrigued by the headline, why don't you give us a quick rundown of what exactly is going on with the Splash Mountain ride?
Well, so right now, obviously, in essentially all facets of life, we're sort of all reviewing issues of social and racial justice.
Sure.
It started in one place, but it has kind of grown, and we're all sort of kind of wondering, where can we all do better? And one of the things that popped up in social media was Splash Mountain. The issue being that it is themed after Song of the South, a movie that was made in the 1940s by Disney, combination of live action and animation, but it is very much a movie that's a product of its time, has some problematic racial elements to it, in that it's a movie that takes place just after the Civil War, and so relationships between white and black people are not necessarily the most constructive, we'll say. There was a feeling that it was time for Splash Mountain to undergo some sort of a change. There were many ideas that popped up, and the most popular one thus far has been The Princess and the Frog. And that spawned a change.org petition that got over 20,000 signatures, and things have kind of blown up from there.
Not bad for a 197-year-old blind lady.
So how much Song of the South material is actually part of the ride? Is it a predominant Song of the South ride?
It is 100% a Song of the South ride. What makes it a bit interesting is the only real characters that transfer over from the film to the ride are the animated characters of Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox, and Brer Bear. They make up the movie. Jumps back and forth between live action segments with humans, and then the character of Uncle Remus tells a story, which then the animation takes over. And those stories in the film are focused on those three characters. The ride has sort of expanded that idea. There are a lot more animal characters that don't actually appear in the film, which is a whole other thing. So the animated characters are the only ones who appear in the ride. Uncle Remus does not appear. None of the human characters do. Brer Fox, Brer Bear, Brer Rabbit are there. Zippity Doo-Dah, the Oscar-winning song from the film, is there. Mm-hmm. That's where the ride focuses.
I find it really strange, though, because, and you wrote a piece for CinemaBlend talking about the controversy about Song of the South and the really complicated history that Disney has had with the film. It's a movie that, correct me if I'm wrong, like when they launched Disney Plus, it was not part of the catalog, right? And it's not a film that's readily available through Disney, right?
No, absolutely not. It was last screened in theaters in 1986. Mm-hmm. Back when the fact that we haven't seen it since then is more a function of the fact that Disney has stopped re-releasing their films theatrically. Mm-hmm. Before home video, that was a major part of their business. Things shifted in the 80s to home video. Having said that, in North America, we've never seen a home video release of the film. It has seen home video releases in Europe, feeling being that the racial issues are less of an issue there. Mm-hmm. But the CEO at Disney, Bob Iger, has gone on record multiple times to say that it is just not a film that belongs in the modern era. And that it should not be released. It is not currently on Disney Plus, and as of this moment, there is no expectation that it will be.
It does seem very strange then that they would retain a ride that has any of the themes to it, since they seem to be distancing themselves from it. I know that there have been a couple of rides over the years that have changed their theme or their narrative. There have been stories that power certain rides through, and then they redesign themselves. It doesn't seem like it's overly complicated, but I mean, how much of a redesign do you think that this ride would need?
It wouldn't be necessarily complicated, but it would be extensive. There are a lot of animatronics in the ride, and essentially, I mean, I think the core ride of the log flume going down a river and then ultimately going off a big drop, that ride can stay intact.
Sure.
It's just the theming that surrounds it that would need to be updated. And that wouldn't be necessarily difficult, but it would be extensive because there's a lot of animatronics in the ride. One of the ultimate reason that Song of the South was chosen for the theme of Splash Mountain has little to do with the film itself. It has more to do with the fact that there was a show at Disneyland in the mid to late 70s and early 80s called America Sings, which used a lot of animatronics to sing patriotic songs. It was originally designed around the bicentennial of America.
Well, that sounds wonderful. How can that be controversial?
It wasn't, but the thing was, the guy who designed all those characters was a guy named Mark Davis, who was one of the 9 old men in Disney history, one of the original animators who sort of defined the Disney style. He made movies earlier in his career. In the 50s, Walt drafted him over to Imagineering to mainly focus on attractions. So in the 1970s, he did America Sings. 30 years earlier, guess who was the guy who designed the animated characters for Song of the South?
Oh.
So the thing was, the characters in America Sings looked like they belonged in Song of the South already. And it was an easy way to take these animatronics and reuse them rather than destroy them for a brand new attraction that they were trying to design. And that's ultimately, I won't say it's the only reason it became a Song of the South ride, but it's a major reason that it did.
Now, I have a 2-part question for you. Why is Princess and the Frog the obvious replacement for it? And secondly, how are fans reacting to the idea of changing it from a Song of the South to a Princess and the Frog?
This gonna be good.
Well, on the first question, I'm not sure that necessarily it's super obvious, but I think there's a couple of reasons that it feels right. One is that if we're going to change the Song of the South ride because of potential issues as far as viewing race, maybe let's give the African American Disney princess, who generally doesn't have a lot of representation in the parks, an opportunity to be more in the parks.
Please, please, please.
The other reason is, at least at Disneyland, Splash Mountain is in an area called Critter Country, which borders New Orleans Square.
Oh.
Splash Mountain is literally the first thing that you will see as you are leaving New Orleans Square. You walk past the Haunted Mansion, and the next thing you walk past is Splash Mountain. So Princess and the Frog being based in New Orleans and the surrounding bayou, that makes a lot of sense. The fact that the ride itself, or the movie itself, does take place largely in the bayou with a couple of frogs going downriver. Now, there's a lot of thematic concepts that obviously transfer.
So fans love it then.
As with any concept, any suggestion of changing an attraction at a Disney park,
Sure.
things are split. The ride is over 30 years old now, so we're talking about there are people who have grown up with Splash Mountain in their lives. They now have kids, and they want to take their kids on the ride that they went on, that they loved when they were kids. There's always going to be some pushback to the idea of changing any ride in any way.
Come on, boys. Won't you shake a poor sinner's hand?
Having said that, I think there's a bit more excitement, well, maybe not excitement, but interest in the idea here than there are in other places. What I've seen in a lot of cases are people who are saying, I don't know if we need to change it, but if we're gonna change it, that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
And so I think that's where a lot of fans are. They're not necessarily pushing for the change, but they're okay with the change were it to happen.
All right, so we're going to put your feet to the fire. And as our Disney Parks expert here at CinemaBlend, how do you think this is going to play out? Do you think that Disney is eventually going to make the change, or are they going to let this controversy sort of blow over and let the fans get angry about the next thing?
That's certainly a possibility. I think the biggest hurdle right now is that with the parks being closed and Disney basically hemorrhaging money.
Mm.
They're not looking to add a new project that's going to be time-consuming and expensive. There's a lot of question right now as far as some of the projects that were in the middle of being done, and what's going to happen to them when the parks reopen. Are we going to see the major changes to Epcot that we were promised, or are they going to pull back on that? How much longer is it going to take to see Avengers Campus at Disney California Adventure? We don't know what's going to happen with the stuff that they're already doing. Adding something like this, it's going to be definitely down the road. So my guess is they kind of will leave it as a wait and see. If the desire to see that change continues, then we certainly could. I don't think anything is truly sacred in the parks for Disney.
Right.
Walt always said the parks will never be finished. They'll always be changing. They'll always be adding. So I don't think that there's necessarily going to be an automatic feeling that, oh, it's Splash Mountain. It's a great ride. Everyone loves it. We're always going to leave it the way it is. I think there's always going to be a possibility.
My daddy never did get what he wanted, but he had what he needed. He never lost sight of what was really important, and neither will I.
Well, again, like you sort of point out, there's a lot of uncertainty going on, and there are a lot of projects that Disney's involved in at the parks that they're in the middle of doing, major ones that they have announced. And so we'll wait and see how this plays out, whether Disney thinks that it is important enough for them to address this issue, even if they make an announcement that it's part of their plan to eventually make the change, but they have to wait for things to sort of come to fruition before they're able to do it. So keep it here on CinemaBlend's YouTube page for updates on what's going on with the Splash Mountain ride. We definitely want to hear from you guys. We want to know what you think Disney should do with this particular ride in the Disney parks. Do you think that it's time to move away from the Song of the South themes that are at Splash Mountain? And do you think Princess and the Frog is a natural fit? I think Dirk sort of won me over when he talked about its proximity to the New Orleans portion of the park, and that just makes too much sense not for it to sort of expand out, turn that little corner into a bayou-esque theme, and still capitalize on the water-based ride. But we'll see what they decide to do. While you're down in the comment section weighing in on this debate, I want you guys to do me a favor and hit subscribe. Turn on your notifications. We're going to be doing even more conversations about Disney and the parks here on our YouTube channel, so make sure that you keep track of every single video that we post.